So, exploration of potential consequences of overlooking SDG 14, life below water, for meeting SDG 1 in poverty. So, you see what happens, so there are, these three, pictures, given over here. The first one, a coral reef in Fiji. Fiji, you may be, knowing is a, small country in the, I think next to, Australia and, that side. Okay, and yeah. Marine-based tourism such as diving is an important source of economic revenue in many island nations including Fiji, and this picture is from there. So you see this flourishing, like a nice, like a beautiful picture, where you see the corals. These are the corals, here, and yeah, these are like marine lives, like a fish and like other, like animals. And the second picture, fish aggregating device in Solomon Islands, another island. Okay. Fisheries are an important source of economic revenue in many island nations. This is very usual. Okay, so you can see this fish aggregating device. So you see these nets, from here hanging, and from this picture is from below the water. And the third, like this graph, we have relationship between the trajectory of progress towards SDG 1 and poverty, achievement by 2030, x-axis. Okay. So yeah, here on this side. So no data, decreasing, stagnating, long term, on track, attained. Okay, so which country has attained, like this target, which has not actually attained, or maybe it is decreasing, falling behind. Okay, long term or on track, or stagnation, or no data. So on this, like a line. Then we have economic dependence on oceans, y-axis. Okay, so here we have this dependence on ocean percentage wise. So 0% to like 80% over here at the top. And the trajectory of progress towards SDG 14, the shading of points you can see, like these, so no data in this grayish, like this circle, stagnation, by this yellow, and then light blue long term, and on track dark blue. For a series of small island nations, sensitivity to low marine ecosystem health and services is represented by the economic dependence on the ocean, which we estimated as the percentage of GDP from tourism and fisheries. We choose examples countries, like where data was available and marine based tourism predominates. Classification of progress towards goal was sourced from, like this source. You can see over here 2019 SDSN indicator dashboard, which reports on progress towards all SDGs. Decreasing trajectory is negative, such that the country is moving further away from the goal attainment over time. Stagnating trajectory is horizontal or shallowing positive, such that the country will not attain the goal by 2030. Long term trajectory is positive, but the country is unlikely to attain by 2030. On track trajectory is positive, and the country is likely to attain the goal by 2030. Attained, the country has already achieved it. So those are the like parameters. So you can see different countries over here. No data from Tuvalu, Marshall Islands, and Palau also. Well, dependence wise, if you see, close to like an 8%, it looks like over here. Marshall Islands close to like over 35%, 34%, something like that. And then Palau, I think close to like a 55, like a percentage or something like that. Okay. Decreasing, Micronesia, Papua New Guinea in the long term range, Solomon Island also, Cabo Verde and Vanuatu is here in stagnating, like this thing is dependence is here. Solomon Islands dependence is little less than 20%, and long term it's going to achieve in the long term like a range. Kiribati, well, there is no data, okay, but it looks like it is on track. Okay, but how do they conclude this? Okay, Samoa and Tonga, they have like attained, and their dependency is little over 20%, and then we have Fiji, attained, its dependence is like over 40%. Bahamas, it's stagnating, on SDG 14, life below water, but SDG 1 it has attained. Okay, so Bahamas, its dependence is also I think close to 50% or so. And then we have at the top Maldives and Seychelles. So Seychelles, if you see, is the light blue. So in the long term, this SDG 1 it has attained. Okay, there is no poverty related issues in Seychelles and Maldives. Okay, but like on is life below water SDG 14, Seychelles is having long term this thing, and Maldives is under like a stagnation. Okay, so this needs to do a lot on like these SDG 14. Okay, so this is this distribution, a very interesting distribution for correlation. Okay, their economic dependence, SDG 1 and SDG 14. Okay, because 1 and 14 is also kind of like linked very much in these countries, in all of these countries. Okay, because this is like a end poverty, the first one, if you remember, the most crucial one, right? So interesting like analysis. Then we have another exploration of potential consequences of overlooking SDG 14 for meeting SDG 2. So now this correlation between 14 and 2. Okay, so let's see, there are three like a pictures over. First one, fishermen in Kiribati, right? You see this, it's a very nice pristine like scene of ocean we see over here. The second one, fish for sale in Solomon Islands. And third one, see relationship between trajectory of progress towards SDG 2, zero hunger, on this one, achievement by 2030 x-axis. So zero hunger, by 2030, like no data, decreasing, stagnation, long term, on track and attained. So this is this distribution here. Food security dependence on the oceans, y-axis. Okay, so food dependency. Okay, again 0 to like a 60 and perhaps here maybe 80%, right? So that is the distribution on y-axis, and the trajectory of progress towards SDG 14 shading up points. So you can see this is the legend for SDG 14. If it is here, no data, red decreasing, yellow stagnation, light blue long term and dark blue on track. Each point represents a country, only select countries are named. Sensitivity to low marine ecosystem health and services is represented by the dependence of food security on the oceans according to estimates of the percentage of animal protein in human diet sourced from fish. These data were sourced from Blancard et al. You can refer this source. Categories of progress towards goal were sourced from the 2018 SDSN indicator dashboard, which reports on progress towards all SDGs. Decreasing trajectory is negative, such that the country is moving further away, and the same legend from the previous one. So let's see. Well, for zero hunger, like there is no data for like a Kiribati. Okay, and yeah, and then we have Gambia here with this yellow stagnation. So SDG 14 is under a stagnation, but food dependence is I think close to 55% or so, right? And this is under decreasing, so they need to like work for this. Okay, yeah, and then we have here Indonesia, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Sierra Leone, Maldives. So for SDG 2, they are at long term like a target. Okay, but for this SDG 14, you can see most of these are under like a stagnation, yellows, so that means there is a lot to do, and few reds also I see over here. Only one dark blue I see over here, and few light blues scattered here and there up till like this length till Bangladesh, like at that point. So a lot needs to be done. That's the conclusion what I see. And attained, yeah, zero hunger is attained in Japan, okay, completely, but food dependence, if you see, is under like a 40%, and on SDG 14 it is stagnating. Okay, so they need to do like for SDG 14. So that is the correlation between these two SDGs, food dependence of these countries. So very interesting like analysis. The third one, we'll see interaction between SDG 14 and SDG 5, gender equality. So here we have women fishing for arc clams in the Solomon Islands. This picture, you see these these clams in their hands, and women removing shells from mangrove in the Solomon Islands. Yeah, this picture you see these mangroves. These are like a marine, like plants, trees. Okay, they are very much like helpful for like a environment. Okay, they save like from like tsunamis, flooding, right, and excessive like a water. Plus they provide like a nice like a ecosystem. Like harboring like a place for like a marine like life in the roots and these places where there is like a water. A lot of like aquatic species actually live and thrive. Okay, so Sundarbans you may be aware of from West Bengal and parts of Bangladesh. Okay, that's an area which has like a similar like this kind of environment in India. Okay, so the third like a graph, it targets it says about target 5.A and the two indicators used for assessing progress towards target 5.A. Neither of these indicators mention fisheries. Instead, they focus on land use and agriculture. So what it says, undertake reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources as well as access to ownership and control over land. Okay, and other forms of property, financial services, inheritance and natural resources in accordance with national laws. Yeah, so indicator 5.1.A.1, A, it says proportion of total agricultural population with ownership or secure rights over the agricultural land by sex, and B, the share of women among owners or right bearers of agricultural land type of tenure. Okay, so basically making women like a part of the property ownership in all possible ways. Second one, indicator 5.A.2, proportion of countries where legal framework including customary law guarantees women's equal rights to land ownership or in the control. So these are the two associated like a target points. Yeah, some mention of like a underwater life in our day to day like a literature. This I have referred from like a children like a book. Okay, so like how it talks about how to protect life underwater. Hi, I'm any sunbeam. Can you spy way to stop the source of the days and save marine life? So you see number of like a everyday like a human like consumer like a products which are like a shown over here, which kind of needs like some this thing to save like our marine like environment. Okay, so you see a lot of stuff are mentioned which for which we are dependent on oceans also, right, and several things. Okay, so interesting like examples of plantation, cycling, like a plastic products, like several aquatic like animals, right, etc. And then it talks about how the CO2 is mixing in the like a saline water and making it more acidic. Okay, when the water becomes more acidic, shells and sea animals dissolve because like their shells like a calcium carbonate you may be aware of these corals. Actually they are not so much resistant to like a more acidic environment, right, so it is harmful to them, and that's how entire like a coral reefs are under threat. Plus like that reduces like number of fish and other aquatic life forms, finally dissolving it of like its life like abilities to sustain life in this, right. So that thing is a very interesting this thing which like it teaches like sensitivity about like water ecosystems to our children, because this is this like awareness we want from early childhood, so that one need not actually be fed one he or she actually grows. These habits actually are very essential from the beginning, early ages itself. So it's a commendable like effort from the publishers. Yeah, another like interesting and beautiful picture of how life how human habitats are also planned close to the water. Water brings life, right. So yeah, so here this slide talks about illustration of blue bond framework, principles and eligible project categories. So let's see what are those like blue bond principles given over here, and eligible project categories on the on this right side. Okay, so it talks about defining and designing future blue bonds could be structured along the above presented format with a special focus on transparency of process, strategic alignment of issuer with broader sustainability goals, and impact of bond proceeds. So use of proceeds for project, process for project evaluation and selection, inclusive like risk identification, management, etc., management of protocols, and fourth one, reporting, use of proceeds, expected impacts, impact monitoring recommended. Okay, so yeah, quality ESG, risk impact process, positive impact assessment, inclusiveness, so these are the like sustainable blue economy financing principles. Okay, and with the blue bond eligible project categories, so existing categories of leading bond standards, so these are the like a standards given over here. EU sustainable finance taxonomy given over here. Maybe you can search these for more details. You will find like interesting like methods of how economics and like projects can be visualized together. Blue tags, yeah, so goals and objectives are visual like SDG 14, sustainable blue economy, BNC conservation, marine climate mitigation, adaptation, etc. Okay, and transparency tools, for that you can refer over here, blue natural capital positive impact framework. Okay, some more details, refer like this link, search for this. Yeah. So yeah, leadership forums related to SDG 14. So issues facing our oceans, climate change, first and foremost pollution, and then overfishing. So these are the main three issues currently occurring for our oceans. And barriers to progress, lack of political will, because many of the countries they are not willing. Short term goals, they are not planning for the long term issues and consequences. Limited awareness and action, lack of data in most of the cases, enough data is not available. Poor supply chain cooperation, demand greater than supply, there is always like over consumption of stuff. Okay, and that's why this over exploitation. So levers to accelerate progress, what can be done? Transboundary action and leadership, long term goal setting, multi stakeholder dialogues and partnership, data transparency, so that everybody is aware of the real situation, strategic communication and engagement, labeling, standards and organization as central convening space for supply chain cooperation and innovation. Okay, so yeah, you see another interesting pictures of a glacier where it is meeting the water body, and you see these like a these ice like a shelf, these are falling gradually and melting into the water and becoming part of this like a water body. So yeah, so let's see what the UN Environment says about some challenges and solutions. Over 3 billion people depend on marine and coastal biodiversity for their livelihoods, we saw in the first slide, but pollution threatens the world's largest source of protein, because like so many people are dependent, 3 out of 8, it's a major source of protein and many other like food requirements for the society, right? So what happens to that if this is threatened, right? They directly get impacted. So reducing pollution must be the first priority, protecting marine and coastal ecosystems. Second, 40% of world's oceans suffer from overfishing, poor fishing practices and poor waste management. Like in the previous module we saw like how much of these pollution and plastic and other like stuff is threatening the existence of the like aquatic species, right? Animals, birds, fish, they are ingesting these plastic like articles and stuff, and they're simply dying, right? They're getting caught in like nets and fishing nets and other plastic like articles, right? So those kind of stuff. Okay, so pollution must actually stop, and like waste dumping in the ocean must stop completely, and harmful fishing subsidies, and stop unreported, unregulated, destructive fishing practices. So it should follow managed practices only, not the unmanaged ones, not the unsustainable ones. Finally, coral reefs, which provide a home to 25% of all marine, are being destroyed at an alarming rate, like by construction, by like a bigger size, like a ships, and like a by increased like acidity in the oceans, and all of those features, So fight climate change, reduce sedimentation, stop coral mining, promote sustainable tourism, so that it remains there for future also, right? So with this we have come to the like end of this session. Always remember, water is an integral like a part of our ecosystem, okay, and there is no life without it. Even our bodies are made up of like over 70% of like a water content, and mostly like other living forms also are like so much dependent on water. Okay, this is an essential like a factor we must preserve, right? So yeah, So thank you all for joining this module. See you in the next one.